Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Pierre, and thank you to GS1 Australia for inviting the AIP here today. So as Barry said, the AIP are the peak professional body for packaging, training and education in Australasia, and we cover Australia, New Zealand and Asia. And we are here to help anyone and everyone with any questions or assistance they need with all packaging, primary, secondary and tertiary. So one of the things that Pierre touched on was about protection and transport, and it's really important to remember the fundamental role of packaging. And if it's the one thing that you can take from today's presentation, I think this is a really important one. So packaging has a role, and it's really, really important. So packaging has to protect, contain, preserve, and transport a product all the way through the supply chain and all the way through to a consumer. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the food and the beverage and the products are protected, they're preserved, that we have health and safety of the consumers. And the most challenging one, we have to balance environmental and sustainable impacts of the packaging and also the products. So when you're looking at a cold chain, it's really important to understand that we consider two areas when we're talking about intuitive and innovative packaging, and that's within product waste. And within product waste, when we're looking at designing innovative packaging here, we're also talking about food waste. So the environmental impacts of food waste are far higher than that of packaging waste, and they are really, really important when you're designing your packaging. So what I wanted to show you was just a few things that we're doing in this space. So the AIP have developed a 5-point Save Food Packaging guidelines, and it's to help people that are designing food and beverage packaging to ensure that they're minimizing their environmental impacts, and that's environmental impacts of both the product and the packaging all the way through to the consumers. And what we're trying to do here is embed these designs into all of the brands so that we're minimizing waste at the start, because as we all know, environmentally, if we can minimize it at the start, we're going to do a whole lot better at the end. It's not going to be as difficult and challenging as it currently is. So we look at it through various things, and it is important to understand that packaging is not just primary packaging, secondary packaging and tertiary. And when you looked at that schematic that Pierre had about pallets and how to pack and stack and wrap a pallet, there's a whole lot of science involved in that to make sure that there's aeration and airflow to make sure that you're not wasting the product within the cold chain. So we need to make sure that we're optimizing all of the packaging all the way through the supply chain and minimizing waste along the way. And we do that through extension of shelf life, making sure that there's temperature control, and as Pierre touched on, things like RFID and NFC tags, time temperature indicators, scavengers, absorbers, etc. But they're all absolutely critical to ensure when you're transporting the product through the cold chain that we're making sure we're not wasting. So a couple of other areas that we look at is in terms of accessible and inclusive design, and also making sure that we have controlled dispensing. And then obviously really, really important area is tracking and tracing and making sure consumers understand the health and safety aspects of the packaging, understanding best before dates, date labeling, etc. And then we also have to make sure that we're balancing the two targets, which are the 2025 national packaging targets and the 2030 food waste target. So when you consider packaging in the cold chain environment, we have to make sure that we're minimizing waste. We also have to protect, contain and preserve the product all the way through the consumer. So I wanted to show you a couple of innovations that are really smart in cold chain, and some of them are really intuitive and can be taken and used in other categories as well. So within the Australasian Packaging Innovation and Design Awards, we had a few standout packs that I wanted to share, and one of them was Junie Lamb. Now, this is for the export market, And what they have done is they have designed this packaging with an inbuilt bone guard. And what it does is actually protects the bone that ultimately can split through and tear into the packaging. And what that does is if it tears and it opens, it not only wastes the food, but it also wastes the water and it also wastes the packaging. So we've got to make sure that we're protecting it as best as possible. Another really fabulous one that's just come out on the market is for live lobster export. And it is insulated wool, so it's compostable wool. And it has an outer liner, which is return to store, soft plastics, recyclable, and which is great. But this development has the capability to keep live lobsters at 7 to 12 degrees Celsius beyond 36 hours. And this is a live lobster when they're exporting it. So it's an incredibly innovative and intuitive design, but it's really important for the cold chain. We also have products like the proteins, and we have the chickens, and we have the meats, and anything that not only domestically but for export, we have to make sure that we're protecting, preserving, containing it, but we also want to make sure that it's intuitive. And this is a really smart pack that's freezer ready, and it has a small portion control for a small household, but it's also designed to extend shelf life. And when we're talking about packaging in cold chain, we're trying to extend shelf life and preserve the product for as long as possible. Another really smart one is from Moana in New Zealand, and they came up with a Cryovac grip and tear pack, and it was designed for meat, poultry, and the seafood markets. And it is a really intuitive pack that improves food service and retail market handling, because again, when you're thinking about the cold chain environment, the markets, there's a lot of transportation, a lot of handling, and we have to make sure that the product's protected as much as possible. We also have some replacements for traditional wax cartons, which are overall not recyclable in this country. And this is an intuitive pack from Disruptive Packaging, and it's called Unicore. And it's 100% waterproof, leak-proof capability. And it also can be closed-loop collected in this country. And it has a superior 10-color gravure print capability, as you can see. But this is ideal for fish markets, for seafood, and it is a really smart way to replace EPS and traditional wax cartons. Another one that's really fantastic is from New Zealand again, and it is an avocado, bruised avocados that were ploughed back into field. And they realized that they were wasting their food, and they didn't want to do that anymore. And they wanted to find a commercial opportunity for this. So they commercialized it into a guacamole paste. And then they created this product as an export market. And it's an extremely successful product now in New Zealand. But the packaging extended the shelf life by 90%. And that's not only fantastic for the export market, but it's saved a product that was going to be ploughed back into field. It's been valorized, so it's actually minimizing food waste, which is a great initiative. And then we have a couple of other different areas that are really important. And I know that Pierre showed you this one, but this is when we're talking about modified atmosphere packaging. And when we're having conversations about the cold chain, EMAP and MAP packaging is really important. And this is for broccoli. And it was designed for cold chains to maintain under 5 degrees Celsius. And not only does it do that, it reduces costs, weight, space taken up by ice, and it's ideally suited for air containers. Other areas that are really smart are things like intelligent packaging, which many of you that are here today understand, but things like Hazel Technology systems. And this is called Avalast, and it was developed as a shelf life extension program that enables avocados 3 extra days of optimal ripeness on average. So this not only extends the shelf life, but it reduces the throwaways and it reduces waste all the way across the supply chain. Fresh tags are another really innovative area for the cold chain space. And I know Mark Mitchell's online today, and I know that this is a really important area for him and for the council, because we have to track and trace and measure all the way across the supply chain, and we have to make sure we're not wasting. So not wasting product, not wasting packaging. So when you're considering what you can do to measure your cold chain losses, you need to look at measuring it through intelligent solutions like data loggers, TTIs, and making sure that you're sharing it with all of the people across the supply chain, all of the stakeholders that you work with, so that everybody has access to that information, so that you can genuinely and with transparency measure your losses all the way across. So TTIs, as Pierre touched on, are a really important area for cold chain, and they can be put on primary packaging, and they can also be put on secondary packaging. So they're different. So as you can see on the previous one, so the label actually changes color on the outer, so you can actually track this if you want all the way through to wherever it's being delivered. And then you also have the primary version of it, which is ideally suited for tracking and understanding of the use by dates and best before dates for the consumers in their household. And then they have another similar one, which is an after opening freshness timer, but it's the same concept. It's about making sure that you can measure and understand the use by for the products. And then we have things for the secondary packaging and also for outers, which I just wanted to touch on, because this is another really important area for e-commerce. And within the cold chain, there's a lot of people ordering online, and e-commerce is not going anywhere. And when you look at some of the new innovations that are being developed in this country, it's just fantastic to see what's happening. So not only are they more sustainable, not only are they replacing problematic materials, single-use plastic, getting rid of EPS, loose fill and molded EPS, which is really, really important, but they're also preserving the temperature of the product. So they're maintaining the chilled application that the previous alternatives had, but in a more sustainable option. So this one is called TempGuard, and it is curbside recyclable. And at the end of the day, this is virgin craft paper. It's FSC certified recycled paper, but it's been designed with all the insulation and temperature controls of any of the previous packs. Just launched, which I thought would be of interest to a few of you, is another alternative called Wrap Pack from Ranpak. And it's a cold chain solution that they are saying is recyclable and provides thermal protection for up to 48 hours for e-commerce food delivery. And they have designed this to be craft paper, 100% recyclable, renewable, as well as moisture resistant. And it's designed so that you can have the machines in your warehouses and you can create your own loose fill yourselves when you need it, which is an interesting solution. And then we have things like what Opal have developed, where they're replacing problematic materials with fiber-based recyclable materials, and also maintaining the air and the breathing and the absorption of the humidity. So it looks a very simple design, but it isn't. It's a very technically advanced design that makes sure that that paper breathes and it absorbs the humidity and it avoids overheating of the product. And these are all really important features when we're talking about transporting food through the supply chain, and particularly through the cold chain. And when we talk about airflow, we can also talk about airflow and aeration in wrapping, in strapping and wrapping, and making sure that the air flows freely. So if you think about the schematic that Pierre had, where he had all those multiple options of how to pack and stack and wrap a pallet on a truck, this is another additional feature that you can have to maintain that airflow, because we want that airflow in the trucks to make sure that the food isn't turning or spoiling too quickly in the cold chain. And then the last one that I wanted to show you, it's not food and beverage, but it's a really interesting and really smart innovation. And this has come from the same company that developed the wool for the live lobsters, but they have just launched and won Peter Awards for a vaccine protector. And when we're talking about cold chain, we're not just talking about food and beverage. We're also talking right now, everyone around the world is talking about vaccines. And this technology enhances the base to maintain an under 20 degrees Celsius for over 60 hours. So it has the same capabilities of previous packs, but it's fully sustainable, compostable. The outers are curbside recyclable, and it has a radiant heat barrier in it. and it creates an additional layer of radiant protection, which is a really smart technology. So I'm going to leave you with this, and this is what I started with. Please remember the fundamental role of packaging is that we have to protect, preserve, contain, and transport a product. And when you're working in a cold chain, it's absolutely critical that we get this right at the start. Otherwise, we're going to be wasting product at the end. So thank you very much. And hopefully that helped give you a little bit of exciting innovations in packaging.